Welcome back to the Perfect Chaos Podcast. This is David, and I've got my co-host on the far side of me over here. We've got Rhonda. You are missing Alyssa, I guess, this week.
I am missing Alyssa this week. However, I will say, when Alyssa and I were doing a podcast, we never had the wrong banner on the podcast.
You don't have the... Oh, hey.
Oh, yeah.
Hold on. And if this wasn't live, then we could go back and edit that kind of stuff. But since we're here...
Since we're live.
We just go with it. And so we're doing some cross-podcast pollination here.
Yes.
As we have Eric Klaus right here from the TEMSEA Leadership Podcast that started this last year.
Yeah.
He's been back in his podcast area, but we come out here in the main hallway when we got... You never know.
The view.
We got Corey walking by, and wonderful weather.
Every
out
once in a while, the flashy lights come on. It's a little distracting.
So you never really know. So tell us a little bit about. I know about you. My wife may not know about you. None of our listeners.
I know some about Eric.
Well, I'm honored to be able to be here. And you texted me. It was about an hour ago, and we actually were recording the next episode. And by the way, the environment where I am and where you are is totally different. So I'm like really excited.
It's a perfect chaos. It works perfectly.
It's like, I feel like I'm like flying in a plane. So this is cool. So you were asking me about my experience. What was it you asked me? I'm like distracted by the lights and everything.
It's like, it's lights, lights, camera. All right.
Well, we do know my initial impression of Eric all those years ago is that he is the better half of Lee Blair. That was my initial.
We're missing a chance to have Lee in here with this.
So can I just poke fun at Lee for just a second?
He's not here to defend himself.
So Lee did. This is to date. I was back in the early 90s. Let me get a drink. Hang on.
You're fine.
He's been talking for an hour, so.
We also have some Jolly Ranchers if you want a Jolly Rancher.
Yeah, you can't edit this out. This is the realness of podcasts, right? But Lee did his paramedic clinical with me. And he has a whole nother story about that. But it was so funny. But we were partners for many, many years.
Right.
And then, we've kind of grown up together. And then we started working togetger. And we've been dear friends for, 30-something years. So that's the background.
Right.
There's a lot I'm not going to say on this podcast because it's recorded. But we've been great friends.
I don't have a censor button.
I work at a Christian institution, so I need you to not get me fired today.
We've been family friends. Our families know each other. So it's been awesome. It's been awesome.
That was just my initial impression when a long time ago when I helped Becky Calfee with registration. I was like, everywhere Lee goes,
we were teaching.
That little cute guy with him goes.
So that goes back. That goes back to our youth again. That toy called My Buddy and Me.
Okay, wait, who's the buddy?
I don't know that. We'd have to figure that one out.
I think Brandon Ward's the buddy. He is the my buddy.
All right.
Let's get to business.
We got our start here because we got bored at the house during COVID.
Yeah.
We wanted to come up with something, and Rhonda one day goes, "Hey, what about a podcast?" And
Did I say that?
You said that,
okay.
And then it kind of went away, and I'm like, "Hey, you mentioned doing a podcast." Like, yeah, I did. Like, would you still like to do that? And she's like, by the way, we've already put our name together. We have a podcast place, and I got some stuff. Let's go ahead. And we're sitting out on our back deck, and our intro for our audio version was actually recorded in the back.
Wow!
So that was our COVID,
you could hear the dogs bark.
You could hear dogs bark. It was great, and we've gotten more stuff since then. We could make it so much better, but we didn't. So where did the TEMSEA Leadership Podcast, where did that generate from?
Yeah, it's kind of a crazy story. So one of the things that I've done for years is I have like mentor breakfasts, and there's a couple times a month where I'll sit with someone that I respect, that we bounce ideas off back and forth. And although I've thought about a podcast before, I never thought about it, seriously.
Right.
So I mentioned to him that morning, I said, "Hey, I need to share something with you. Like, I got this crazy idea." And I was like, what about a leadership podcast? And he just kind of looks at me and he's like, "Wow, I'm going to really have to give that some thought. Like, I think that's a great idea." So And I was like, maybe he's right. So I called Lee as soon as I left. Actually, Lee texted me. And
I knew it had something
yes,
to do with
it. Of course,
Lee had
everything
to
goes back
be.
to Lee.
I know, right?
So, knowing Lee in his leadership role here, so he texted me. It was about a work thing. And I called him back. I was like, hey, what's going on? And so then I said, hey, I need to share an idea with you. I said, this is you and me. I've only told it to one other person. But what are your thoughts about a leadership podcast? Strictly leadership, nothing clinical, just because there's a lot of great stuff.
There's plenty of clinical.
You can go to the EMS Handoff podcast.
Which is right. I mean, so, hey, we have to find our niches, right? And so I'm going to fast forward. So the next thing you know, we're on the phone and ideas are starting to swirl. And that idea was planted and sort of evolved probably within a week. And the partnership with TEMSEA came to be, and when the conversation came, and I've been in this field for a long time, is I knew that you don't want to do it without people that are better around you,
right?
And that was like 100%. I would love to partner, and then we formed a committee. That is absolutely that has the ideas, right? The good committees, right? To bounce ideas from, and so that was the beginning of the partnership. And of course, this is all volunteer time, and that's kind of where it birthed. And I knew that, because of my leadership journey, was like, what has fascinated me, Ron and David, all through my journey is I love to ask questions and learn from other people. And this just seemed to be natural. It's like we have so many people that we know that we can learn from. And so here we are in several episodes later, and that's kind of how it was birthed.
Well, tell us about some of those episodes. What do you got?
So now let me just start off by saying, and I don't know if you'll experience this, but when you go from thinking about a podcast to doing a podcast,
yes,
I'm going to be vulnerable with you. It was like, I don't know how to do it. Then I started recording on my iPhone, right? My son here is Chris, which was on the episode. And it's so funny. He's going to kill me for saying this, but after I listened, he busted out laughing. He was like, Dad, this is terrible. And I'm like, oh, Chris, I know it is terrible. So there has been a lot of growth. I feel like I have got on a train that's already moving 100 miles an hour. So that's a whole nother podcast. But some of the episodes, right away, our first episode that we wanted to do that was official outside of the introductions was to get Chief Greg Miller on. And the reason that I wanted him on there, as we all know, he's one of the most recognized leaders in the state. And with all of his influence, he was one of the first leaders that I met. And I knew his Gatlinburg story because I heard it.
Right.
And I said, Greg, I was like, would you be willing? And he said, yes. And that was it. And that was the first experience. And I was like, wow, this is powerful. And so that was the first one. And after that, we did a series on stress, which I never thought that we would, but we did. And we had several interviews with a PhD that told about some research. And then a flight provider that had a horrific event with a pediatric patient. And then we kind of broke it up a little bit. And then we did one with my son, Chris, who's a new EMT at 18, and talking about what was it like for you?
Right, that first shift.
And there were certain things that I couldn't put in there because he was being honest. And I was like, oh, my gosh, like, we got to capture this.
Yeah.
And we did. And just to be able to let people know that it's not what you think, right? Good and bad. It's fun.
Oh, yeah.
And then it was fun because we were picking back and forth with each other because he's my son. And he was like, Dad, you said this. And I'm like, well, what's going to come out of his mouth?
Yeah, that's a lot of what we do.
You have to, right?
Picking back and forth.
And then the one that we just did just a couple of minutes ago was with Dr. Jarrett McKinney and Dr. Jeremy Brzezinski. We did a lecture this morning. And so we did an interview with them. So that's kind of been the journey. So a lot of plans, but that's what's happened so far.
Well, and I'm sure that as you go through, I mean, I think sometimes we don't even realize the qualities that we have. So I'm sure you're going to start asking people and be like, what are you talking about? I'm not. But how much valuable knowledge can we get even I'm thinking about those charter TEMSEA members of where we come from.
Yes.
And maybe not necessarily where we came from, but maybe why we came from.
And history.
Right. And because, we talk about education all the time, and my classes know that my least favorite topic to ever teach is the history of education. But one of my favorites is why did we make the changes? And to have that kind of, we are lucky. I know they're bringing the charter members back here tomorrow, right?
Yeah, that's what I hear.
But like to be able to kind of get that background, it can almost turn into like a historical
like
project,
a documentary
right?
of some sort.
Well,
I agree.
Right.
And in preparation for that, Tom Coley, who's one of the founding charter members, actually has been posting on some of the social media about what some of this stuff has meant, because a lot of people that have been involved with the TEMSEA organization have seen the awards. You've got the Brian K. Cox Mentor Award, or the Wise Thurman Lifetime Achievement Award, Carla Kelly's Merit Award. There's several different awards, but like the new people,
they never knew Brian.
I remember I was going through the paramedic program. I've known Brian, at that point most of my life, and they allowed me to just take my KFD shirt, dress shirt, and take the KFD patch off and put the Rome State patch on there. Well, they still had a badge on the front that said KFD, and he was doing one of my evaluations, and he was like, "Are you authorized to wear that?" Chief, you better, but people don't have that interaction. They don't have that ability, and why was Brian considered for a mentor award? Why? There's so much history
on your campus.
He's got a tree on campus, actually. Yeah, I know.
There's a Brian Cox tree on the
memorial
tree.
Yeah, because he was not only with KFD, but he taught with us for many years. That was one of the things. There were so many people that was a Brian Cox student. That was a huge thing. And so that history is amazing. So we're going to give you. I'm going to put you on the spot.
Oh, do I need to sit down?
You just sit down, right? Stand up. 2 questions.
Yeah.
What 2 questions would you ask us?
I appreciate that, because I think you and I already had a hallway conversation before the podcast. It's like, I don't know what I don't know. And you offered some great advice. And when we tell you what the advice
Go
was,
ahead. I remember the conversation. We were at Park Vista in Gallenberg, Region 2.
Yes, and your advice, this is what I took out of it, was just let it flow and don't be too serious, and let it be authentic. And it was great advice that I've used. So I am grateful. So you have already answered one of the questions that I had, and I'm grateful for the help, because, man, let me tell you,
that actually was that actually came from before I ever got in. I had some mentors. They actually used to do one called the EMS Educast, and had Greg Freeze and Rob Terrio and Bill Toombs, some people that have been around EMS for quite a while. And we did an EMS Educast Lite, which was like a 2 to 7 minute kind of episode. And I sent in my very first one. It was scripted. Like, it was all audio. I just recorded on my iPhone. It was all scripted. And I got a phone call. It's like, love the content. Did you have it all typed out? Like, yeah. I don't.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
that was kind of one of our things. So I write most of our episodes, but there's never like, here's what we're talking about.
There's some guiding questions.
Then we put some guiding questions in, because that's how I teach.
You let it organically flow.
It just flows.
I love that. See, like, I'm going to go back and listen to this, because like you guys are teaching me right now. So I'm like, okay, don't script it out. This is good.
I just last week was in Arlington. I gave a whole presentation on podcasting as assessment and beyond. I think it's just your classroom.
Yeah.
So there's that.
And our daughter couldn't go, so our daughter actually went, and she was the second half.
Yeah, she was my co-host last week.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we would just go live in between. I know. Anytime, Eric. We'll even let Lisa do.
Okay, maybe
because I don't want to.
It's like,
I mean, only if you don't want to, that's fine. But I'm just saying, I don't want to split y'all. So,
it's fun. Yeah.
All right, second question.
Yeah, later.
No, your second question. I said you got 2 questions.
Like,
you answered your own first question.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to think on this. What is it about the podcasting that you've learned that you never saw coming. Like you're into this, and then all of a sudden you have the realization was whether it was the impact or whether it was like somebody you interviewed. Was there any revealing things like, man, I didn't see that coming, but I'm so glad there was a blessing out of it?
Well, I'll also run, but for me, it was kind of the realization that people listen.
Okay.
And so on the Perfect Chaos, and we give a shout out almost every week to Mike and
Sylvia,
because they give us tremendous. So Mike is a good friend that we only know through this. He actually called me, and he's actually started some stuff on his own.
Okay.
And it's like wow. We did this, like I said, we did this just something we could do. We were tired of sitting in the house, not really doing anything other than work. And while this is work, it's not just easy. Some people can just pick up their phone, but it's work. But it's been fun. It's something we've all been able, our whole family's been able to get. But it's like somebody listened, Mike reached out like, hey man, this is like great. And we'll get messages from him every week. It's like, hey, this is a longer episode. I've got a long drive tomorrow. I'll let you know. And it's like,
I love that.
and it's led to so much. And so like people listen. And you may never hear from them, but they do. So somebody's going to get that. And it could be at the moment that they need and change the dynamics of their life. Mike has gone to do leadership stuff. He's been in law enforcement and EMS for 30-something years. And now he's taken on another leadership role helping people. And he's like, I didn't know. I didn't have that trigger. We need to be listening, and now he's doing it. So it's like awesome stuff. So.
Yeah.
I think mine has kind of been twofold. On one, I think I've always been that person that I'm like, I don't have anything to like, why is anybody going to listen to me? And I was amazed that my students who hear me all the time, like I teach their educational technology, they listen to it and ask when we're going to get new episodes. So that was really surprising to me. But also what has been able to build out of, our COVID project. I mean, for lack of a better, it was just something to do. And that now, I was able to take that and I've created a whole new capstone for my graduate students. And they have created a podcast.
That's amazing.
And then I'm helping another organization that I'm with. And we're doing a podcast for them, so it's been, to me, kind of fun to watch. Okay, something that we just started, really, it was COVID, and we had some frustrations with
everything
breaking, everything in our house broke.
the internet.
I am firmly convinced the good Lord did not mean for us to spend 24 hours a day with our family. I love our children.
And they've heard the story, so this is
not. They also didn't want to spend 24 hours a day with me. So there is that, I will hold to that till my dying day. It's not meant to spend that much time. But just to see then the things that have kind of bounced out of that, and what started as just, okay, we're going to do it for fun and see what happens and really talk about education. And not, I tell people all the time, don't listen to our podcast if you're looking for like the big philosophical, pedagogical, like, we're going to talk pedagogy, but it's going to be fun and, we're throwing, football scores and UT's playing,
Yeah, you can't go the highs and lows. Like,
Yeah.
When we found out that we weren't going to be able to go to UT football games because of COVID, it was like,
that was its own thing. So, you'll always know if you're doing good or not by the podcast. But I think then to watch that turn into, okay, wait, we're now like doing consulting and doing more presentations and able to share this and in my mind give students a different way to show what they know and give students the kids that they may not want to be the one talking. Okay, well, you're the one producing.
Right.
And to give them that opportunity to build confidence and show what they know, that has been it's just fun to me to look, and I watch these students, and they come in to record, and oh, I'm so nervous, I can't do this, I don't like to hear myself talk. But they're fine, and all of a sudden they've gone 45 minutes, and they're like, that's it. That was,
I'm really relating to what you're saying.
so to me, I think, on the one hand, the fact that my kids my students want to listen to me when I'm not just teaching, like they're doing it. I don't assign it. I really don't, but they don't get extra bonus points, But that was one thing. But then to watch these kids come in, I call them kids. Some of them are older than me, but they're my students, so they are there for my kids. But to watch them kind of build that and go, oh, wait a second, I could do this with my class. And I'm like, yeah.
They believe in themselves.
Yeah. And they're not, even stuff as simple. One of my students, she teaches integrated early childhood, which is, it's a new state license, but it's a combination of special education and the pre-K 3 license. So it's very small children, some of which have needs for intervention, that kind of thing. And she's getting ready to start a podcast for her class and let her kids like pair up. 4-year-olds once a week, they're gonna pair up to hear what they've learned. And she was like, I said, no, use your phone.
Yeah.
That's all you need. And I think that to me has been to be able to see people because of the experiences that we've had, for us to be able to go out and then those people go, oh wait, I can do this. And we're going to give 4-year-olds with special needs a voice and let them talk about what they learned. I know, that's like the cold chill, and I think that to me has been the biggest kind of aha moment, is that no, because, and granted, we have gone a little bigger and have got more stuff, and we're doing more live streaming, but I really can show a teacher how to let their 4-year-olds just talk about what they learned. And that to me has been amazing, because it really does make this kid's voice.
Thank y'all for sharing that. That really is impactful.
Yeah. So tell everybody how they can find the TEMSEA Leadership Podcast.
So it is on the podcast platform. So Apple, they can go to Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Google, and also the TEMSEA website. If you go into podcasts, I just use one, Spotify or Apple, they can type in my name, Eric Claus, ERICCLAUSS, or they can type in TEMSEA, and then it will pop up the Leadership Podcast. So yeah, that's how they find it. It's pretty simple. And the website too, the TEMSEA website, which is easy to find. And so yeah, that's kind of where we are. So
all right. Yeah. Any last thoughts?
I'm grateful. Hey, thanks.
I'm just glad you were here.
I am really. I mean,
we do have to get Lee on here because I want to hear his version of the story.
So Lee may be coming next. We got to have her.
Yeah, do that.
Just say
the last word.
So you're going to hear him. All of a sudden you're going to hear
sound effects are favored.
I'm going to talk to the TEMSEA board about this.
I never got to push the sound effects until last night. I said.
And
I want to change things. I want one to say, I want one to push and it says Rhonda is the cooler and one on Levens.
So here's the thing is we got the Western CMS Directors Education Conference at the end of June. She had to pay people to do her survey to say those.
I did. I have to. I just did. I used to work in the teachers.
So yeah, she's trying to reach out that. I taught her everything else.
He has not taught that before. But you know what? I teach educational technology. It takes like Yes. Figure that out.
All right.
Guys, I appreciate it.
Thank
So
you.
we'll have Leon next. So we'll give you a heads up. Like that, we'll come behind that.
Yeah, you can totally. Yeah, we got a full headset.
Yeah,
You just like pop it out.
Not even just grab it. Right back there. It's like,
Let's do it. That's
I know.
we can hide it. There you go. That's not true.
So the one question I have though before we let you go, was Lee a good student?
He had to
You know what? I appreciate this question. So before I can I let him answer it first?
And then get your perspective on
Something let him talk about that. Without anybody.
That's awesome.
All right. Well, until next time, which will be coming just shortly, remain calm and Perfect Chaos.